Life is sweet. Let it sweep you off your feet.
Hi, it's Allie, and find your joy. Please remember to like and subscribe. I'm trying to remember to say those things. Today, oh man, we have back with us again some incredible, incredible music royalty for Canada. The awesome, the amazing BJ Cook. Welcome back.
Hi, y'all. I feel kind of country in
That's right.
when I put this on this morning, I think, you look like a country singer. No, how are you?
I am really, really well.
How are you? What's going on?
Well, besides trying to
cool.
make things work. Besides that, all is good. I was thinking so much about of getting together with you again, and I can't stop thinking about it because I get obsessed. Can you make your camera go to your right just a little bit to show what's on your wall over there? Because I'm like, so people who aren't watching this in the video format, who are missing the beautiful smile and face and wonder that is BJ Cook, won't be able to see this, but I'm going to tell you that there is behind us on that beautiful green wall, or sage, I guess I should say, a friggin' platinum album there. What is that? Tell me. I'm so curious.
Okay. In 1972, thanks to one woman named Rosalie Tromley, we had a million selling record.
Wow.
And it was written. Oh, see, my stuff is upstairs. I got for my first birthday present I got, it was a book called Wildflower, the Song from Heaven or something, right? And it's written by the wife of the guy who wrote the words to Wildflower, who happened to be a Saanich police cop. Okay.
The guy was a cop?
Yeah, that wrote that song, that
Wrote that
beautiful.
beautiful, beautiful song.
He wrote the lyrics to that song. Okay. He used to sit in his patrol car and write poems and words. And when we put Skylark together, we used to go to Doug Edwards' house and sort of sit around and bring samples of music that we all liked and would like to sound like or be. And Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young a lot of us loved them the best, right? That was sort of on the top of the list because the vocals were cool and the band there were really cool songs they played and everything. So it was, and David, you have to understand, came from being a jazz guy. Like he didn't listen to contemporary music at all.
Right.
When we hooked up in the beginning, his idol was Bill Evans, the great jazz guy, right?
Okay.
And I think I talked about this the last time, but and there was an actual moment when he switched. We flew from Vancouver to LA to sign papers or do something with Capitol Records. And while we were on the plane, David had bought an LA newspaper I don't know, or somebody left or on the plane so he's going through the clubs and what's happening. And he sees that right down the street from where we're staying is a club called Shelley's Manhole. And Shelley Mann was a famous musician and he had this jazz club. So David went a little bit berserk and he went, oh my God, Bill Evans is playing there. So we ran home and had showers and got all dolled up and everything. And David wanted to get there really, really early because this was Bill Evans after all.
Yeah,
And
of
he
course.
was, one of the greatest jazz players that ever lived. And David literally idolized him. And so we got there about 7. The show started, the first set was at 9. So we get there at 7 because he wants to sit. And we get into this little black, dark room. And it was set up so that the piano was, our chairs were here, and there was the piano. And and then the bathrooms were down, you went kind of down a slope. So you could stand on this sort of thing and put your arm up and look right down and
Oh,
watch Bill
yeah.
Evans play. So David was almost, I mean, it was so emotional for him to be there. So we have dinner, and we noticed that there's only like 5 people there. But I guess we said to ourselves, well, they're here for the same reason we are. We want to get the best seats, right?
Yes.
So 8 o'clock rolls around, maybe 10 more people show up. And when he went on, maybe 30 people, 35 people were in that room. And that was an eye opener because David had wanted to be a jazz musician,
Oh,
and for him, and we were there signing a contract for we were in a rock and roll band or a pop band, right? So he did a complete shift in his thinking and said, okay, I can make money doing this. I
right.
can, yeah. So, but that's and it's true. And everyone knows that. Sadly, you don't mention jazz too much. And if you're talking about making a record, because it's never made except in the 40s or something, but
Right.
so that was, so Wildflower, by the way, Dave Richardson and David Foster were really close friends. And I wish I knew how they got to be friends or why they were friends. I never occurred to me to ask. But Dave Richardson came to visit us with his then beautiful wife named Jo. She was just gorgeous. She looked like a model. She was so beautiful. And she was made up perfectly all the time. And David and I had a baby and a 2-bedroom apartment on Coldwater Canyon, a lovely apartment. But then, of course, all our friends used to come over, and everyone smoked dope back then. It was just a thing, except for David. And he didn't even want it around him. He couldn't stand the smell of it. He didn't, no dope smoking in my house or around my family. And I said, well, I accept, I definitely agree with that. But some of our friends would just come over, and we had this giant, beautiful coffee table, and they'd throw their little bag of dope on the table, and David would have a heart attack. So Dave Richardson, the cop, is visiting us. And of course, so, so anyways, Jo and I got to be quite close because the guys hung out, and she and I went shopping and stuff. And she told me the most amazing thing that I will never forget. I said, you're so beautiful and you're always perfect. And I said, but you're probably beautiful without it, like you're just a lovely looking human being. And she said, well, Dave has never seen me without my makeup. What? So she used to get up every single morning and put her full makeup on and then get back into bed with her full makeup on and then wake up made up. And that is, if she ever hears this or sees this, but she did tell me that, and I never forgot it. It was the most amazing thing. God, that's love, boy, or something. I don't know. Or is it? Like we were
I don't know
afraid
what
to
that's we could sit there and try to figure that one out, couldn't we? Like sometimes it's a generational thing. I've seen it in movies where you first meet a guy and get up and do the makeup before he wakes up. But that's in a when people first kind of hook up thing. Well, I guess that's what isn't that. That's not me.
It was weird. It was weird, but I'm telling you that story, which is very gossipy, but I'm telling you that because that's the woman who inspired him to write Wildflower. And she was a nurse, and she'd come home just completely rattled because somebody had died, or she had to do something, wipe up poop, or whatever. And so all those lyrics, she's faced the hardest times you could imagine, right? All that was about her
Yes.
experience as a nurse, right? And doing her duty.
Wow.
So I don't know if the nurses know that, but he wrote those lyrics in honor of her. and her job and all
Oh
this.
my gosh.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
beautiful. And
that's so lovely. And you know what? The guy who wrote that song in my mind, he didn't need her to put the makeup on in the morning, right? Like,
absolutely. Oh,
you
no,
know.
no. He ended up being, this woman that wrote this book, that the new one that's out, and his picture in uniform is in the front of the book, and it's called Wildflower, right? So it's just out just now, right?
Oh,
And
wow, okay.
they lived in Jerusalem. He became very religious, and when he left the force, and that's where he met this girl, Leslie is her name, his new wife. She's lovely. I met her too. Um, uh, and they really did a pilgrimage, and they went right to Jerusalem and lived and became, I think one of them, I don't really know. I shouldn't talk about them because I don't know what they did over there, but I know they lived there. They might have been selling rugs for all I know. No, they were. He used to. Let me tell you another story about him. He was a very sensitive guy, and him being a cop was just so weird to me.
Mhm.
Every single time he saw me. Now, I don't know if you're like most people, but most people have never heard the album. They've only heard Wildflower, right?
Right.
And and it's really sad because uh, David Foster, to me, at his finest, he was 23 years old, and he had the responsibility of being the leader of this band. And we were in the studio in Capitol Records, the famous Capitol Record building. That's where we signed our contract and all that. And his two cohorts, and the reason that we even had the band together was because of Doug Edwards, basically, and who wrote Wildflower, who wrote the music. Doug was always kind of an icon to David, and he's a couple of years older, and David just thought he was the best musician because he played everything. He was on the road with the Fifth Dimension for 3 years as a bass player. Yeah, so he's
Wow.
a very gifted writer and very gifted musician, and then he ended up with Chilliwack. That was the man that he played guitar in, right?
Yeah.
So anyways, when it all came together, it was meant to be. David, we had been with Ronnie Hawkins. I'm sure I told you that story.
Yeah,
And
that's
then
great. Yeah.
right. Okay. So we leave Ronnie Hawkins, and I suggest to David, well, why don't we put our own band together and, see what that works like? And David just said he said, yeah, well, if I could get Doug Edwards and Steve Pugsley and Kat Hendricks, I might think about it. The three top guys in their field at the time. And he was just being glib and saying, yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, when we came back, this is why I believe so strongly in the stars and the universe. And Doug was with a band called Spring with Terry Frewer, killer band, and Steve Pugsley was with somebody else too, and Kat Hendricks was all over it because he was a studio musician. And so when I approached him on it, he said, "Well, if you can get all those guys, I'm definitely in." So David came back and the band was already put together. I said to him, you said if I could get these guys, I got them. So I had all these guys set up. So Skylark was born. And then David said, we all love Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. And I knew that I wasn't like I always, I'm a good singer, but I'm no Celine Dion or Whitney Houston or Barbara Streisand, the other women that he's produced, right? So,
Right. Wow.
um, he, yeah, so
Wow.
it was very, what, what?
I just, it's just, I want to finish this and then you're going to tell me this thing. Oh, I'm going to tell you my very small David Foster story was, so now you have to remember that I spent 20 some years in church. right? So I didn't listen to music outside of church. I didn't do those things. So one day, several, like, I don't know how many years ago, 20 years ago or something, a friend of mine, well, she became a friend, but at the time I was just meeting her. We're both of our husbands were in the military, and so we were at a military family resource center meeting, and she starts talking about her son, because we both had kids that had disabilities, and her kid was a variety club kid for a long time. She goes, yeah, I even have a picture of him with David Foster, to which I replied, who's David Foster? And the guy that was the head of I'm so sorry. So the guy that was the head of the Military Family Resource Center had lived in Victoria his whole life. He goes, how could you not know who David Foster is? And I'm like, I was in church for a really long time. We didn't listen to music outside of it, right? So I didn't. And so he said, I played in a band with David when we were in high school together. His name was Jerry Gadd, this guy that I knew, right? And he said, I've known him for years. And he goes, he's so famous. He starts saying he produced. What made me think of it was you started saying the people he's produced, right? So now fast forward, I go in and sought out, who is this guy? And I was like, oh my gosh, how do I not? And then I thought, oh, he was in Skylark. Well, I knew who Skylark was because that was before those days. So that is I'm embarrassed to say, I didn't know. But now I do. I mean, because I was like, oh my gosh,
Okay.
this guy's done so much. Okay.
Okay, I had a boyfriend for 17 years. He has dementia now, but when I every month I would fly, he'd fly me on the helijet. I'd just walk across the street and get on the helijet, and I'd be there for a week or 10 days. And we'd go out all the time, or we'd go to Vegas for a week, or we'd do, it was just a great time. We had a great time, or we'd go on a cruise. And so every single time he was a bit of a groupie, and I didn't know that because he owned an accounting firm.
Right.
And so it was just really funny. He would say to the waiter, we'd be in Vegas or something, and he would say to him, yeah, well, they'd say you're his wife and whatever. And I used to say, oh no, we're not married. I said, we're companions. That's what I used to say all the time. And Alan used to go, why do you have to say? I said, because you've got a wife and I'm not her. So he didn't live with her. They're separated, completely
Right.
separated. But she's a Catholic and would never divorce him in a million years. So that was the end of that. So that was perfect for me because I wouldn't get married again if it was, letter anybody, I wouldn't care. I would never get married again.
Yeah.
So anyway, hey, by the way, the institution of marriage, I have some friends who are madly in love and love each other and have been married for 40, 50 years. I'm not, it's just me personally. That's all.
Yeah, exactly.
I'd like to clear that part up. And here's the other thing I wanted to say. When I was talking to you before, I had you on a thing, because look at what happens when you when the camera's higher, it eliminates all that. Well, it doesn't eliminate it, but Beverly, I have a best friend who's an actor, and she teaches me about angles, because every time we talk, I said, oh my God, I look like such a bag. And she said, because I forget how old I am until I look in the mirror and I go, Jesus,
But I'm looking at you and I can't get my head around that you're 82. I'm like, really? Because you're so
82. Okay, what's the date today? In 4 days, I'll be 82.
82. Okay, pardon me, 81. I mean, I know people seem younger now, but also you're so active and your skin is so beautiful and you're so alive. You have so much life. So when you say 82, it gives me hope. I'm like, okay, so 82 as we used to know it is not what 82 is now. Or 81
Okay.
and 361 days, pardon me.
Okay, well, here's the thing. I say I'm 82. I mean, I've been saying I'm 82 for the last 6 months. When I stand, sometimes when I'm shopping and I'm in line and there'll be a little old lady in front of me and she's like fidgeting and or drop something and I'll help her and then we start talking and it's happened about 3 or 4 times and they're younger than I am. You
Right.
know, I think that what happens to a lot of people, and especially my age, that there's a persona or a presentation that you have when you're a certain age. And guys especially, all men grow beards and become Santa Claus. I don't get it. They get big bellies and big hairy faces, and it's just like a uniform that men over 70 or something or 65, as soon as you start aging or getting gray hair, and instead of thinking, like, I never look at myself and say, oh, you're too old to wear that, or you know, you shouldn't.
Right.
I mean, there's certain, I can't wear a mini skirt, and I can't wear a crop top, but I'm fine with that. You know what I mean? I mean,
Yeah.
there's just you're limited to what you can wear, and I haven't worn. I remember Gabriel and I were doing one of the David Foster Foundation things. We were in Vancouver, and I had a beautiful outfit and heels, and I had brought low shoes only because I knew I'd be doing a lot of running because I was working, right? And so she had flats on, and she said, "Girl, it's time. When a woman realizes that you can no longer wear high heels, it's kind of sad. Because when I can remember being 13 and not, wearing high heels and thinking it was like, I can't wait until I can wear high heels, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
now, God, even I have some beautiful shoes that I've kept, and I can't even get my feet in them, let alone wear them. I mean,
Yeah, I
my
can't do
feet
high
are
heels
so
anymore.
different than they
I
were.
didn't, yeah, plus
Oh,
that, we wreck
yeah,
our
but in any case,
yeah,
I think you can still dress hip and look hip and not have to uh, conform. That's what it is. And if I'm going to be truthful, I'm going to tell you that THC has a lot to do with my health and my aging
right,
because uh, the first and I've been smoking pot since I was 18 years old, which is why my respiratory system has collapsed. But um, I just want to say that people always have this vision of somebody that smokes dope is sitting in the basement, stoned, eating chips, and
right,
just zoomed out of their mind. Uh, the first time I took a toke, I've always been hyper, and I've always had this weird. Um, I know this sounds egotistical, but I don't mean it as an ego thing. But I always felt even when I was really young, that I was flying, watching everything that was happening. I was always getting a bird's eye view of what
mm,
was going on, but I craved and wanted to be down with the people, but I was such hyper and had a learning disability. And back then there was no recognition. If you had it, you were put in the dumb row if
right,
you had a learning disability.
yeah,
So, I was awkward and weird as a kid. So I sort of found this place. And when I was 18, I took a toke of some marijuana,
yeah,
and instantly I came down to stand with. I felt like I was part of everything, and it
mm,
wasn't about getting high, but I did laugh so hard that we had to leave the theater because I was in hysterics. But we were at a movie theater, and this woman took this thing out of her joint out of her bra, and she lit up and it stunk. I said, "Ooh," she said, "Well, these are Mexican cigarettes. Here, have a puff." So I did, and from that time on, I've been
enjoying Mexican
and I
cigarettes.
get, I have COPD, and that's all I have really. I have COPD, and that is because I abused myself with, you know, and now everything's regulated, and now it's all different now. When you get to be 82, everything changes. But I honestly believe that if I'm gonna, how everybody said, oh, I gotta go and have a cocktail, I gotta go and do it. I just have to have a puff, and then I'm
Right.
cool. That's my thing. And
Yeah.
I admit that. You know, I don't have any problem because I've never dropped acid. I've never done any of the chemicals. I've never, you know, and I didn't drink until I moved back to Victoria, which is the pastime here.
Right.
Everybody drinks in Victoria. And so, and I say that lovingly. I mean, you know, why not? So, I coming back here was very difficult at first. I was a relative stranger. I have all these relatives here and I didn't know any of them. And I was gone for 35 years, right? When I moved back here.
Wow. So 35 years you were living in Vancouver, Toronto, LA.
And LA for 10. Yeah.
Yeah. So thanks so much. Wow, it's so interesting to me, all the different places that you've lived and the things that you've done and all the things that you've accomplished. And I think for today we'll stop this episode and come back, and maybe we could talk a little bit about what it was like coming back to Victoria after being out on the road and all that stuff. But for now, BJ, thanks so much for being here with us today. I really appreciate it. It's been awesome. And to our list,
My very great,
pardon me?
I was just going to say, it's my very great pleasure.
Oh,
It's my very great pleasure. It's fun talking to you. You're good at this.
Oh,
You're welcome.
That's kind of you. And to our listeners, this has sure been a treat for me, and I know for you. Come and tune us in. Oh, for God's sakes, tune in when we come back. And as always, find your joy. Thanks so much for joining me today. If you found a piece of your joy in this episode, I would love to hear about what came up for you so that we can continue to grow the impact of this show. Thanks again. See you soon. And remember, find your joy.